Okay. Hi, my name is Summer Watkins. I'm going to be the moderator for the discussion. And today we're going to be talking about the trolley problem. And this is a problem that examines whether moral decisions are simply about the outcomes or if it's about the manner in which you achieve them. And we're going to see this problem a lot in decision making. And for example, our course, we saw the scenario where a train was in a path and it would kill five people or it had the option to move the rails to switch its route to only kill one person. So most people would agree that we should sacrifice one person's life to save five, while others may not feel that way. But the trolley problem comes in when the same option is given, but in a different circumstance. So, for instance, if now the option of someone being thrown in front of the train to stop it would save five people tracks, or some people would argue that we shouldn't throw someone in front of the train if someone's already going to die. So going forward, the same outcome would be that one person dies and five people are saved. And it doesn't matter each way, but others would argue pushing someone in front of the train versus someone just getting hit are two different scenarios that aren't needed. So, coming from a staunch utilitarian perspective, how would you go about this scenario?
Hello, my name is Reese Cooper. I'm going to be taking the position of the staunch utilitarian perspective. Being the staunch utilitarian, the perspective is that no matter how the one person dies, it is focused more on the outcome. So, one person dying is ultimately better than five people dying, no matter whether you pull the lever or whether you push them off the bridge. And again, this looks at the consequences of your actions rather than the actions themselves, whether the actions are ethically right or wrong. You look at the greater good and what's going to create the most, the term they use in the video is happiness, but in this example, you look at what in term is going to preserve the most life. And so, no matter whether you push the guy in front of the train or pull the lever, either or would be the better option than letting the five people die.
Okay, so moving forward from the advocates for the innocent bystander standpoint, how might pushing that bystander in front of the train be deemed not acceptable?
Hi, my name is Victoria Danilian. I'm the advocate for the innocent bystander, and the since the question is asking if it's morally acceptable to intentionally sacrifice one innocent person, the key word in the question is intentionally. It's not about accidentally harming someone, it's about choosing someone to die as a solution for others not to die. The bystander did nothing to cause the danger. They're not responsible for the runaway trolley, and they're not part of the situation because they're in the wrong place at the wrong time. They're being singled out without any justification. Since the five people are already in danger, their situation exists independently of the decision maker, and by pushing the bystander, it creates a new and deliberate act of killing. Not saving someone does not equal killing someone, and creating a death is morally heavier than failing to prevent one. So, since the bystander is becoming a tool that their body is used to stop the train, they're being treated like equipment, like a object, and not like a human with rights. So, the allowing of this logic is very dangerous to society.
Okay, so from a non-utilitarian perspective, how might y'all analyze the moral issues and the moral outlooks of the situation?
Hi, I'm Ryan Weaver, and I will be taking the side of the non-utilitarian today. I want to begin by saying that I understand the appeal of the utilitarian position, saying five lives rather than one feels rational and efficient. But in this case, I believe morality is not math. My position is grounded in the Kantian philosophy, which argues that morality is not about maximizing outcomes, it's about respecting people as who they are. The staunch utilitarian says five is greater than one, therefore sacrifice the one. But what is happening in the footbridge case where you push one over? We are not merely redirecting a threat, we are intentionally using a person's body as a tool. We're turning a human into being into means of stopping a trolley, and that's the moral line. We sympathize more with the advocate for the innocent bystander than with the staunch utilitarian because they recognize that there's a moral difference between allowing harm and directly causing harm. but I would push even further. The deep issue is if morality becomes a numbers game, then anyone can be sacrificed whenever it produces a greater total benefit. This logic doesn't just stop at the trolley tracks, it extends to real world policies. Moral society is not built on calculations of utility, it is built on respect for human dignity.
My name is Jessica Mejia, and I also stand with a non-utilitarian standpoint. And building off of what my teammate just said, I'm just gonna explain why that matters during the trolley problem. In the lever scenario, it might seem like simple numbers problem, one life versus five, but pulling the lever isn't just observing what happens, it's making an active decision that redirects harm toward one specific person. And even if five are saved, I'm still choosing for one innocent person to die. That decision matters morally because we're not just doing math, it's intentionally at this point deciding who gets sacrificed. And for me, at least, that crosses a moral boundary. Um, Also, during the bridge scenario, which makes it even more clear, if I pushed a man onto the tracks, I'm directly using his body to stop the train, which just doesn't feel comfortable and it feels more like murder. If morality were only about saving the most lives, then pushing him should be completely acceptable, and the outcome is the same: one dies and five are saved. But most people feel there's something deeply wrong about pushing him. And that reaction just shows that morality isn't about the results, it's also about how we treat people. And also, if we accept that sacrificing one innocent person is justified, whether it benefits more people, then when would that stop? So at some point, individuals become expendable, and their rights depend on whether sacrificing them produces a better outcome, which is dangerous. So for those reasons, we stand with the bystander who refuses to pull the lever, and not just because we don't care about the five people, but because we believe there are moral limits that shouldn't be crossed.
That's a good standpoint. Do you guys, so coming from the innocent bystander point and also from utilitarian and non-utilitarian, how might the non-utilitarian have a different perspective? Like, how would you feel about it? Or coming from staunch utilitarian?
So the way we look at it is whether you decide to pull the lever or push the person into the tracks, either way, you're still choosing that one person's life is, I don't want to say less valuable, but sacrificing one person is better than allowing five people to die. So I want to counteract y'all's point with pushing the guy onto the tracks out of the way. If it still just comes down to pulling the lever, would you pull the lever to save five people's lives, even though it still kills one person?
From the non-utilitarian point of view, tech, we would probably not pull a lever because we are then directly influencing the death of one innocent person rather than letting fate decide fate. And in Kantian's philosophy, that he says that we should not react based on anything and let life be life.
Yeah, so that's what like the whole trolley problem it really is. It's like you have two different circumstances, but they're both going to have that same outcome. They're either one person's going to die or it's five. And from the trolley problem, we're going to have either the one person is going to get pushed or we're going to turn the tracks the other way. And so, coming from an advocate for the innocent bystander standpoint, how might you see it from their point of view as well? Or we can tie in the non-utilitarian perspective and the staunch utilitarian. So how might we look at the moral outlook? Like, how can we look at the same situation, but two different perspectives, but in a moral outside perspective?
Well, I can kind of add another aspect to it. So let's say that um you don't want to decide fate, but the one life on the tracks or the one life that you're pushing in front, let's say that's someone who has not lived a ethically good life. It's someone who has um done bad things or has committed crimes against people, would you still stand by the fact that you would still rather let five lives die compared to sacrificing one life, even if that one life is viewed societally as less than the five lives?
That's a good point to also bring up. Like, for the perspective, you could say, what if the one person we push is a prisoner? Let's look at that perspective. And then the other one person is a doctor who has two new children that just came in this life. Let's look at from that standpoint, from the different outlook. So how would the non-utilitarians come within that?
Well, but then again, how would we be able to protect individual rights if we just choose like the majority, aside from like the example you just gave? Like that's the conflict that
So
I'm
do
standing
the
on.
do the five people who are in the way not have their own individual rights?
So does that mean the one person doesn't have an individual right?
No, I'm saying they all do. But from a utilitarian standpoint, it's better to sacrifice the one life to preserve the five lives. It's better to do the action that's going to produce the outcome with that would preserve the most life, which would be either pushing the guy off the bridge or pulling the lever and sacrificing that one life in order to save innocent people's rights and lives rather than just one, because the five people still did not ask to be put, in front of the train.
So then what stops society from sacrificing someone whenever it benefits more people?
That's a good point. And that brings up the ethical dilemma of, people trying to play God per se is from y'all's standpoint, y'all are looking at it as, well, if fate is for the train to run over the five people, who are we to sacrifice one individual to try and save those other five?
Well, from my point of view, I just think that feel like pushing the guy or choosing that one guy just feels like murder. And if morality is just about numbers, so then like why does it feel so wrong if it should just be a feeling of numbers?
Well, you could look at it from the standpoint as well of the bystander effect, where, standing there and doing nothing could also be viewed ethically as murder because instead of trying to be proactive and save those five people's lives, you just sit back and they're going to die, but you're not doing anything about it. So I guess my question from that is, would you still consider it an ethical dilemma of just sitting back and being a bystander and not trying to intervene?
I think it probably is still an ethical dilemma, and that's why this is probably a big argument because, yeah, we are sitting there watching this happen, but I still believe that if you are pulling the lever or pushing someone off of a bridge, that your actions directly affect someone dying rather than you could be standing 100 feet away and watch this train run over these five people, but you know that you didn't do anything to really fully affect the killing of those five people.
Yeah, that kind of goes with the trolley problem because it is just this big ethical dilemma. And going off like kind of what Jessica said, we talked about the moral outlook, but we also talked about how when would society deem it wrong if it was allowed? Like someone was just allowed to push that one person in front of the train and let it be a speed bump, or would the other person take it, make the train go on a different route? So going back to the society, so with moral issues, how might, from all of y'all standpoints, from staunch utilitarian, the innocent bystander, or the non-utilitarian, how might we all look at a moral issue in this way?
Well, I can start with that because um, in the video and as well as just, in society, it claims that most people, if it were between the five people and the one people with the lever, most people would pull the lever and let that one person die and save the five others. But then once you implement kind of your own actions into it by pushing the person in front of the train, a lot of people will switch up and say, "Oh, well, I wouldn't sacrifice that one life to save five." So I'm interested to see kind of where that disconnect is, or where I guess the line is drawn to where you would be okay pulling the lever but not physically pushing someone in, even though the outcomes are the same.
So coming from an innocent bystander or non-utilitarian, how might y'all come into that?
I mean, I kind of agree with the utilitarian here, but just kind of opposite sides where he would save the five people every time. But from my point of view, I would probably neither neither pull the lever or push the person because I think both of those have the same effect, and both of those mean that me myself have a direct effect on killing somebody.
I agree with that, and also in the sense that in both of those cases, either pulling the lever or pushing someone, like that same person is still being used as a tool. They're being used as an object, like their humanity is like dissolved in this moment. And I just don't think that's
So as a society, why is there seem to be a disconnect between pulling the lever and pushing the person off the bridge, do y'all think?
I might think that the reason is because people don't, if you're not really thinking about it, people don't see the pulling the lever as harm to a person when in reality it is, where they think that pushing someone over a bridge because it is directly physical to that person that you are causing the harm to them.
So what importance do y'all think that the trolley problem brings? Like, why do you guys think that we discuss this in our course? And like, what does the trolley problem, how does it make people think in different perspectives, as we've seen with non-utilitarian, staunch utilitarian, and the innocent bystander?
Well, I think it definitely makes people sit there and think kind of where they would draw their ethical line in a dilemma like that. Because, um, like the video said, like a lot of society would be okay with pulling the lever to save five lives instead of one. But then once it implements their own actions directly and they realize that it's them doing it, that a lot of people would say, no, it's not my place. So I think it's important to kind of look at the different perspectives of where people view themselves in the scenario, because it's not a matter of, what they're doing. It's a matter of how they see themselves and what they see themselves doing in the scenario that causes the dilemma in people's heads.
I agree. And I also want to say that, like what Ryan was saying earlier about how pushing someone off to us is like a direct act of killing. And then just the lever, it's like you're kind of distanced from it. But at the end of the day, there's the same outcome. So that person still dies. And I think that, like, looking at this trolley problem, you kind of, from this lens, I guess, you see that pulling the lever is just as bad as physically pushing someone off. It causes the same outcome, but um, you wouldn't really think of that just not looking deeply into the issue.
Yeah, and looking into like the pushing part. So going off of that, do you guys think that the moral weight, instead of like talking about the morality of it, but like the moral weight of the action, do you think it would change if you either do nothing versus actually intervening to alter the outcome?
I think that's a big part that's being overlooked is because, even if you decide to do nothing, if you decide to not push the person or pull the lever, you still have to look at yourself and say, hey, I just stood here and did nothing while I watched these five innocent people die. So I think that's a big part of this dilemma that gets overlooked because not a lot people are like, oh, I'm not involved in the scenario. Why does it matter? But in reality, you could have prevented